Does it matter what other people think about you?
Now it doesn't matter at all. And it's freeing, isn't it? It's liberating. If you can get to the point where you genuinely don't really care what people think about you, then it's such a nice place to be.
Welcome to Curious Chats and Kind Acts, the podcast that celebrates difference, kindness, and the little things we can all do to make our world a better place. Join me, your host, Sonia, co-founder of the Axe charity, for some open, authentic and fun conversations with lots of interesting, extraordinary, everyday people who are all a little bit different. Prepare to have your curiosity piqued and your heart warmed as we explore the ways we can all make a difference in the world, no matter how small. So get ready to be inspired, uplifted and motivated to be the kindest version of yourself. Let's make the world a kinder place, one conversation at a time. Hello, welcome to Curious Chats and Kind Acts. I hope you're doing well. Today I chat with Kirsty, who talks about her difficult journey of being pregnant at 14 and having a baby at 15, and living through two coercive and abusive relationships. What I love about this chat, though, is how Kirsty learnt to be kind to herself, like herself, and grow into the person she has become. The mother of 3 wonderful children, has a thriving career, and some beautiful, long-lasting friendships. Just a warning, though, we do talk about domestic violence, and it's a difficult listen at times. However, surprisingly, we do still manage to laugh a lot. Now, when I listen back, I do wonder if I'm a bit flippant about such a serious subject. I hope not, and I apologise if I come across as that. Anyway, have a listen, and you'll see how the power of self-kindness can turn someone's life around.
Tell us, start from the beginning, start wherever you feel comfortable.
Okay, so I grew up, I think maybe with a slightly unusual childhood. My mum was a psychologist, and she was having, she was making her way in her field at a time when perhaps women weren't as recognised as they would be now, and it was unusual for women to work full time. So I started in nursery at 6 weeks old, early, and went to a nursery over in Liverpool, which was really, really diverse. So I got lots and lots of different kind of experiences of different people from a really, really early age. And I met she's my sister for all intents and purposes, but I met my sister there when we were both, she started when she was 6 weeks old. Our birthdays are a week apart. And, you know, we're still very close now. We do lots of stuff together.
So she's not your actual sister, but...
No, she's my pseudo-sister. I've got sisters, but yeah.
Right, so you're a friend you met at the nursery.
Yeah.
At 6 weeks old.
Yeah, very, very tiny. So I started there, and then went there until I was school age, went to primary school over in Wirral. We'd moved to Wirral when I was 1. And did okay up until probably the second to last year of primary school. And then things started to go maybe a little bit awry at that point. Awry, which word it is now, awry, anyway, a bit off kilter. So I had a teacher at that point who, who was a very, very old school teacher, you know, the type that used to throw the chalkboard at you, or the chalkboard rubber thing at you, and wrap your knuckles with a ruler. And he used to call me and my 2 best friends in school at the time the 3 demented witches. So that was the second to last year of primary school. I had a really, really tricky year with him. He used to, you know, he'd stand us at the front class and say, you know, 3 demented witches, I remember one occasion that he said, you need to write an essay about why you are 3 demented witches. And I was quite canny at that point. I'd kind of figured out how to play the game a little bit. So I wrote an essay, and then he told me I had to take it to the headmaster. But I took it to the headmaster, and the headmaster had a form for not actually reading things. And I just said, we've been asked to bring this work because it was really good. And he gave me a school stamp and sent me back to the classroom. But, you know, joking aside, he was quite detrimental, I think, to a young child and to their confidence and stuff like that. I spent a lot of time with my dad and with my childminder, who is she's been like a second mum to me my whole life, and it still is again. But by the end of primary school, I was having some significant problems. I was quite angry in school. I was rebelling. Didn't want to do what I was told. Didn't like authority, actually, I think, very much.
Same.
Yeah, and then moved into high school. Went to a grammar school. Definitely didn't fit the mould as a grammar school student. And within a year and a half, they had permanently suspended me, which meant that I couldn't access another school. But they didn't want an expulsion on their record, but I couldn't go to a new school. So I had a little bit of homeschooling.
Who did that?
It came through Arrow Park Hospital, if I remember rightly. I'm not really sure. I mean, my mum kind of looked at all these different avenues, but because we couldn't access another school, that was the only thing that was left available to us. So, at this point, what am I, 14? Yeah, 14. Still really, really young. I was having a really, really tricky time. And, I didn't really engage with it, and had also met a group of people who were very, very different to the people I'd kind of known growing up. So, they had a lot more freedom. They had, that was it actually, it was the freedom. They had a lot more freedom, and I started spending more time with them. And at that point, I was running away from home, being really difficult, challenging, all that kind of stuff. Tricky teenager. And I met my eldest daughter's dad, who was 3 years older than me.
So how old are we at this time?
14.
So you're 14 and you met a 17-year-old.
Yeah, so most of the people in the group were either kind of a year older than me or 3 years older than me. That was just sort of how it fell. And I found myself pregnant with my eldest daughter.
Blimey. I mean, that's illegal for one, is it? Did that ever come out?
It did come up as a conversation, but he was 17. It did come up as a conversation, but there was no... The decision, I think partly because I didn't want it to, was made not to go down that.
I mean, did you like this young chap? Were you smitten?
I was smitten. I'm not sure what I was smitten by, with hindsight. But yeah, at the time I was smitten. I think this kind of social group were so accepting of everyone and anyone, and that's what I loved about them. The whole group, and I just fitted. It was fine. I could be anything. It didn't matter. There was no pressure on me.
How refreshing that is.
Yeah.
Are you still friends with any of them?
No, and I look back at it now, and I speak to some of them and I'm linked to them on Facebook and stuff like that, and we have the odd bit of conversation. And I look back now and I think all of the things that I thought were cool at the time probably weren't very cool for them. So there was one girl in particular who I got on with really, really well. And I think, she's a year older than me. I thought she was really cool as well. But her parents were not present a lot of the time, at weekends and stuff like that. And, we all thought this was amazing. She had a free house and whatever else. But when I look back at it now, I think, no, she was only a kid. I don't know how that felt for her. I've never talked to her about it. But maybe it wasn't quite as cool as we thought it was at the time. Yeah.
Bizarre. So you're 14.
Yeah.
And you're pregnant.
Yeah.
That's got to be quite scary.
Do you know what? It wasn't.
Really?
The scary part was telling my mum and dad. That was the scary part. But I was reflecting on this morning, because I thought, you know what? That's the common idea that people will say, because you must have been so scared. But at 14, you think you're invincible. You think you know everything, don't you? You think you've got it all. Any adults in your life are becoming a little bit superfluous there. You think they haven't got a clue when they're very old and all that kind of stuff. So no, not as scary as you would think it would be.
So how did it go with the rents then?
Well, I told them, I think, if I remember rightly, and it is a bit hazy, and I know we've just talked about memory before, but I left my mum a note to say, like, this
That's
is the
a
case.
cop-out, isn't it?
Bye, and then ran away. We didn't run away, but I went to stay at his sister's for a few days. And then I went back and we talked it all through. And, you know, she did all the right things. She suggested all the options that were available to me. We talked them over, probably not very rationally, to be fair. But yeah, there was lots of ideas floated about. And I was 3 months by then, perhaps. And I just said, this is what I want to do. I want to have her. So I had her when I was 15. My birthday was in September, and I had her in January. And I look back at that and I think about the conflict between child and responsibility, because I can remember. So she was born on the 16th of Jan, and I can remember on the New Year's Eve that year. By this point, I'd realised that perhaps I was not quite as smitten with her dad as I thought I was. But I remember being on my own at home, upstairs in my attic room, which I loved, completing Sonic the Hedgehog. And I just remember being so pleased that I'd completed Sonic the Hedgehog on the Mega Drive, you know. And then I think about that, and then, you know, 16 days later, I had a baby. And that's some contrast when I reflect.
It's a really good illustration of being a child with a child.
Yeah.
So is the young chap still on the scene at this point? Are you deciding
at this point
to give
he's
it a
on
go?
the scene, but he was messing about with other people. He has probably violent tendencies, and that had started to emerge by then. But I think I was just so kind of focused on, I am having this baby and I'm going to have, I don't know. I mean, it was never conscious, but again, I look back at it and I think I had someone who I could just love. They were mine.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he was still on the scene. So I had her. I had it on my own because, you know, I'm pretty sure my mum will never listen to this, so I'm happy to share it. But when I went in to tell her that I was in labour, thought I was in labour, it was 3 weeks, I was 3 weeks early, then she sort of said, oh, you can't be, you're not due yet. And then she kind of, I know it was a bit insistent, she poked my dad took me up to the hospital, and I was in labour. And
so did your dad not stop either?
No, and I don't think I wanted them to. I think there was probably an element of, I don't need you for this kind of thing. The hospital then rang her dad. He turned up sometime in the early hours, fell asleep in a chair, and then got up a few hours later. I mean, he was, you know, we'd been drinking a lot, I think. Fell asleep a few hours later, woke up a few hours later and went home for a shower because he was tired. Missed the whole birth and came back once it was all done. So essentially had her with just the midwives in the room, and that kind of level of support there.
And does that set you up for life, really? It's like, well, if I can do that on my own, there's not a lot I can't do.
Do you know, I've never thought about that, but yes, quite possibly. I don't see huge limits on, you know, obviously things like, you know, I'm never going to be an astronaut, but I don't see limits generally in what I can achieve. I don't always achieve what I set out to achieve, and sometimes I get distracted along the way. But yeah, perhaps
I like
it
the
did
fact
feed
you've
into
turned that into a positive. You're clearly a positive person. Right, so you've had her, and you're living at home, are you, in your attic room with your little baby?
Living at home, and then I stayed there until she was maybe 1, just before she was 1. And then I got I was linked with, before and after the pregnancy, with a youth service called the Contactor Bus, and it was like a big yellow bus that used to come down to the park, and they had, you know, like rounders, and they'd do tea and, I don't know, biscuits, whatever, on the bus. And so the social group that I was part of then all used to go there, used to engage with it. So I'd go along, and then after I'd had her, they'd sort of said, bring her in, you know, let us have a little hold of her, and you can have a cup of tea or go and run round and be a kid for a bit. And I think because I didn't have any emotional attachment to them, I accepted that help from them. But the guy who helped me most through that time was an incredible man called Alf Mullen, who I think he was a youth worker. I think he still is. I'm pretty sure he's had some sort of award for his service to youth. And he helped me get a flat. You know, he helped with so many things up until that point. So yeah, I got a flat in Morton, which was probably, it used to take me about an hour and a half to walk to my mum and dad's.
Still, and are you still, are they still helping at this point, or are you?
Yeah, so my mum came and helped me decorate and such like, and you know, she would have Jade on the odd, well not the odd, but fairly regular Saturdays, so that I could go out. I had to just get her to sleep beforehand, and then I could then go out for a few hours with my friends, maybe every other Saturday. So yeah, they were helping with stuff like that.
And did this help you? Because you were saying you were quite troubled.
Yeah.
Did having the child kind of stop you having these? I mean, you've still got all this stuff going on in your teenage hormonal head. Did that stop that behaviour, those thought processes, that anger?
Yeah, I think it did to an extent. I think, you know, maybe there's just a part of me that I question things. I like to question things. I like to understand why I'm doing something, and I don't always think that conforming is the right way to go about, you know, maybe a process or a situation. But it certainly brought a sense of calm to me with her. You know, I can remember vividly all the little things like rocking her, and she was such a happy baby. She was so happy. And I think because I was so young, I didn't have the weight of the world on me. You know, that's part of the benefit of being that young. Subsequent 2 children, I worried about all sorts of stuff, like cot death and, you know, what's going to happen with them and whatever else. And her, I just thought, no, do you know what? She's cool and we're going to be fine.
How lovely.
It was actually, that side of it.
And you didn't have any little
lovely.
negative thoughts in your head going, I'm going to be a shit mum, I
No.
can't do this, I'm dead young.
No, but there was, you know, that was the external voice. You know, look what you've done. I remember one of the times going back before I got pregnant when I'd run away, and a policeman brought me back, and I can vividly remember him saying to my mum and dad, you know, you've got 2 other children there who are behaving. You probably should just write her off. You know, it's insane. And then after I had her when I was pregnant, etc., and then when I you know was a teenage mum, you've got that kind of external chatter. You're never going to amount to anything. You know, you've made a bad choice. She's not going to have a good life. All that sort of stuff. So I guess that the inner me that was rebellious went, I hear all that, I don't agree, and
I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah, exactly that. I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah.
Do you know what? I think that's lovely, because actually you're describing a really positive teenage mum situation here.
Yeah.
What did you do for money?
I did care work. So once she'd hit 1, I used to go and do quite a bit of care work. So that was fun. It's always fun going from wiping a baby's bottom to wiping someone else's bottom. But no, in all seriousness, I worked with some lovely, lovely people there, and I learned quite a lot. You know, I used to work with the odd person. I worked for agencies, so I worked with people with dementia and such like, and it was just whatever I could get at the time. I did some cleaning work. I used to go to a lady who couldn't get upstairs in her house anymore, and it never needed cleaning, but she just wanted the company. So I'd go and, you know, she'd employ me for maybe 2 hours, and I'd go and clean upstairs in a house which was always spotless. And then she'd just want me to sit with her for an hour and chat to her. And that was nice for me because it gave me a bit of... Because by that point, a lot of that social group had fallen away. So it gave me that kind of social interaction. And I'd also see the relationship with her dad had started to go downhill. So it
You felt quite alone at that point.
Yeah, so it fitted for me, you know, to have these kind of caring roles. And I cared for a guy as well who he always stands out for me. He was paraplegic, and he was in an independent living situation, needed very, very little from me. But, you know, I was in awe of him. He was probably 6 years older than me, perhaps, but it wasn't big enough to feel significant. And despite his challenges, he could do anything, you know. He didn't need any support with any of his personal care. Wow. His house was always really clean.
What were you doing there then?
Just helping him if he did need anything, you know, if he needed maybe something ironing or whatever. It was more of a safety net. So me just sleeping there, I slept there overnight when I could. you know, on the odd occasion. But just a safety net, just to give him a hand and maybe make him dinner sometimes or something like that. Although I probably wasn't the greatest cook, so I don't know how that would have gone for him.
So going back to, you said this social group that were really kind to you and brought you in, they slowly started to move away. Why do you think that was? Is that because you were a parent?
It's because I was a parent. I couldn't do what they were doing in the same way. You know, I couldn't.
The drinking and the staying out all night and...
Yeah. So I just couldn't engage in that way. And, you know, again, perhaps they weren't as close as I thought they were, but equally they were still really young. So maybe it would have been unrealistic to expect that they would have altered what they did to spend that time with me. And I think the other factor was because I moved, I know it's not really that far, but an hour and a half's walk away when people didn't have ways of getting about, that was tricky. And her dad was quite controlling and such like by then, so it was probably a bit double-sided, that, I think. So
you're now about 16, you're living on your own with your lovely little baby, working in care, but quite alone actually.
Yeah.
How did you move on from that?
Well, I can't remember how the decision was made, but I'm pretty good. Like, if I want something, I'll generally make it happen, and that, you know, it applies to even now. That's how I work. And I decided that it would be better for us to move back, to find her a school and all that sort of stuff as she was getting a little bit older. And I wanted a bit more regular childcare. So I found a nursery place about 15, 20 minutes away from my mum and dad's, and I'd found schools in that area that I knew where that social group had existed. So I was familiar with it. So we ended up moving from the flat into a rented property. And I lived there with him for maybe 3 years after that. But it was just my decision to move forward.
It's a rented house with a bloke living there, so you're living with people?
Oh no, with her dad.
Oh right, so the dad's still on the scene. So
he's still on the scene. Yeah.
Right, okay, so you lived in a rented house, the three of you as a little family?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how was that?
It was pretty horrific. He was violent. He was controlling. He didn't do me any good.
So, like, he physically hurt you during that time? Is that when he was drinking, or...?
No. And it's interesting, that one, isn't it? So, there was a subsequent relationship, which I can touch on, but this relationship wasn't based on, the violence wasn't based on drink. I think it was based on something in him that wasn't, I want to say quite right, because I can't think of any better way to put that. But, he did some really, really crazy things. He didn't like me going out. He didn't like me having friends or anything else, but he did a lot of that. And there was, I'll share this, and I don't know whether I'll come back to you on it, but there was an occasion, this was the final, the nail in the coffin, stuff had been going on, it was just a really horrible environment, and I didn't want to stay in that environment for Jade, but I didn't know how to get out of it at the same time. And then I'd gone out for a very, very rare night out with my friend, and she'd taken me over to Liverpool, and we'd gone to for a drink, I think, but I'd driven, and so I wasn't drinking, and I drove us back, not very late. And when I got back, the door was locked. So I dropped her off, I knocked on the door, and no answer, knocked on the door, and he eventually came out, and he picked up a bucket, and I didn't know what it was, and he threw it at me. It was petrol, and I'd taken my shoes off ready to go in and whatever else, and then he chased me down the street with a lighter. So when I say there's an imbalance, there's an imbalance.
And you seriously thought he was gonna, if he caught you?
Yeah, I was terrified. So I went and found one of my friends and stayed with her that night, and then we had a really, really difficult 2 weeks. He would never act that way in front of our daughter, that would never, so she wouldn't witness that. And he was always, he did his best with her, but there was never any violence towards her or anything like that. But for the next 2 weeks, he basically tried to stop me from seeing her, and I kept going back, and I was trying to deal with it all myself. I didn't involve the police, I didn't ask my parents for help. It was this very, yeah, I've got this, I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to do it. And in the end, I couldn't. And I kind of went to my parents, and this was a big thing for me to do, and said, I need some help, I don't know what to do here. Like, you know, she's crying at the door, she wants to see me. Might not have been quite 2 weeks, I think it was about 10 days. But she remembers that, that's one of her earliest memories. The crying and not being allowed to see me.
Yeah. So you, and again, I've fortunately never been in
Yeah.
this position, but it's been 3 years of, like, why did you not leave him sooner?
I think because I was so young and I didn't really know, I didn't have anybody else. You know, I didn't have many social connections left at that point. And I didn't have a close relationship with my parents.
So when he first, I don't know, did whatever,
Yeah.
and it hurt, he physically hurt you, at that point, are you not like, this is not acceptable? Or is it just, how did it become?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because even now when I hear people talking about relationships that they stay in that have this side to it, this violence or whatever, I still, my knee-jerk reaction is to go, why are you still there? And I think, and again, I've thought about this a lot over the years and gone through therapy. I think it's because it's gradual. So, you know, the first thing might be, I've had a drink and I've given you a little shove, or something like that. It builds up gradually. It's not like one day, I mean, it may happen like this for people, so I'm not saying one size fits all here, but it's not one day that he got up and hit me, and actually he didn't ever hit. It was all pushing and shoving and threats and lots of mind manipulation going on, lots of manipulative stuff. So yeah, it's a really good question, but it's really hard to know without rewinding time and giving yourself a proper shake and going, what are you doing?
Yeah,
but
and
I think
the big thing to happen.
I needed someone to talk to as well. I needed someone, I think, at that time to say to me, you need to get out of that. What are you doing? Because I was just surviving day by day by day. And it's surviving when you're in a relationship like that, because you obviously don't see a future, but you do hope that your self-esteem's on the floor. You hope that person will love you enough to change their behaviour. And they always promise that they do, of course.
So he would apologise?
Always, every time, yeah.
Wow.
I'll never do it again, please don't leave, all that kind of stuff. But I think that's how abusers generally work.
Grim.
No, very grim. When I think back, very grim. That me and this me are two different people. I've dealt with it. I'm very detached from it now, and it almost feels like another lifetime. Yeah.
So you came to the end of this relationship. So you're about 18, 19,
yeah.
And you've talked to your mum, and
yeah,
that set off actually leaving him.
Yeah. So I didn't go back after that. I got a little bedsit, and and we had some shared care for a while then at that point. So she would go and stay there a few nights a week. She'd be with me a few nights a week, and she'd go to my mum, maybe once, twice a week. So it was divided between us. So I was, because I wasn't doing as much work at that point because of the control thing as well. But I was, back trying to pick up the pieces of my work and get some of that under my belt, get some experience under my belt, get some, independence, some money, all that kind of stuff. And I had my own little space that just fitted me and her and nobody else. And that worked for a while.
You laughed at a while, so...
A while, because my next relationship was quite similar, but that was with somebody who was... I fell into it too quickly.
How did you meet him?
Again, same social circle.
Right.
I'd kind of kept in touch a little bit with people, but not on any level. And as I got a little bit more freedom and, you know, I could go out sometimes and had a little bit more money to do things, I kind of went out and spent a bit of time with different people, and I'd met him at that point. But he was violent, and his violence was triggered by drink. He was an alcoholic. I didn't know that. Again, when I first got with him, I didn't know that at all. And that took time to, you're generally pretty good at hiding these things if you're a functioning alcoholic. And yeah, that just took time to kind of come to light. And he was again, always very apologetic, and he was quite, he had the extremes. He was mentally cruel, but he was also very loving, whereas I didn't get the love side of it from that first relationship. That just wasn't there.
So okay. When the second abusive guy, I don't know, did he hit you or was it pushing? And
no, again, it was like throwing things.
So when he threw, what was the first thing he threw at you?
I can't remember. Probably a can of beer.
So he threw his can of beer at you. Did a little bit of your brain not go, oh, here we go again, I'm not doing this again?
Yeah, but I was really... I think I was very vulnerable because I hadn't dealt with the previous relationship. My bar was obviously rock bottom. I mean, I'd say it was on the floor, but it's below that, isn't it? And because he had this really loving side, and I felt love from him, and because his anger issues related to drinking, when he didn't drink, he was a very, very lovely person. And we had a really good connection, which I hadn't experienced in that previous relationship. And I didn't really have any healthy modelling of what good relationships look like. Just didn't know what that looked like. A lot of people within that social circle had similar dynamics, or they'd experienced things like that. So that kind of trauma was almost run of the mill, which again, when I look back at it,
group of people.
Yeah, and when I look back at it, I think that's a bit nuts.
So did you chat to your mates going, oh yeah, I got a beer can last night, and they're like, oh yeah, I got the iron?
No, because I was still quite isolated at that point.
Okay.
So I wasn't, we maybe had nights out, but they were almost releases. They weren't
go out and get hammered and forget everything.
Yeah, they weren't conversations. No conversations like that happened, because if they had have, again, it would have been a different scenario. And I isolated myself as well. I recognised that, because you look back at it, and I think there were so many times where I could have found an out, but I just didn't feel strong enough. And I just thought, and I wanted to help him. It's this like innate need in me to fix. I can help you with this alcoholism. I went to, I can't remember, there's like problems with the law and stuff like that. I went to probation things with him at times, and they would sort of say, it's great that you're helping him and all this kind of stuff. But I don't remember anyone saying to me, you on that theme of kindness, you've got to be kind to yourself before you can be kind to other people.
Yeah.
So it's just giving, going out.
Yeah, nothing left.
No, nothing left. And he never really spent much time at all with my daughter, so our time was very, very separate. And again, I think if that had been the case, that would have been much more of a catalyst to do something sooner, but it wasn't, because we didn't.
And again, I don't know. What did you feel? Did you feel you couldn't talk to someone the second time in particular because you felt ashamed that you'd let it happen again, or?
Yeah, there was definitely a feeling of shame, embarrassment, a feeling of, even if you maybe had raised it with someone, then because you hadn't acted on it, it was almost like, I can't say that again. I can't tell them that because they'll judge me, and I don't feel strong enough to leave that relationship yet. They'll think I'm ridiculous for staying in it. But also because lots of those people that I kind of knew at that time really liked him. Because as a kind of shop front, they only see the good bits of him. Yeah.
So are you're having your negative thoughts now, back to the 14, 15, 16-year-old you, where you're just you and your baby in the world, things are starting to, your self-esteem's going, it
was gone. I don't think I had any self-esteem at that point left. I didn't see any value in myself. Interestingly though, purely from a relational sense. So, you know, any other environment I was in, so work, I would try anything, give anything a go. That confidence was there. Talking to people outside of that kind of, you know, social circle, fine, absolutely fine. Always enjoyed learning. So in the middle of all of that, I'd gone back to school via distance learning, and I'd done my GCSEs and my A-levels.
Wow.
So I kind of, you know, I had confidence in so many other aspects of my life, but it was just in relationships that it was like rock bottom.
So we're at rock bottom. I'm hoping it's going to start to come uphill soon, but but you know, we're about 20 now, aren't we? Come on.
Yeah, 21. Yeah.
21. So how did that relationship end?
I called it a day. You know, I found out he was taking quite heavy drugs, and I called it a day. And then he went to prison, and that really helped. Yeah, it really helped with the whole not returning to it.
It needs must.
Yeah.
What did he go down for?
He went down for armed robbery, but it was a really ridiculous armed robbery. I can't remember all the details, but I think he went in with some sort of like pipe or something and got 50 quid from 2 different garages, and then got 5 years in prison for that. So, you know, probably on kind of cost benefit analysis, it wouldn't weigh up, would it? It wouldn't. Yeah.
Not his finest moment.
No, not
right.
at all.
He's out the way anyway.
Yeah.
He's moved on. Right. So what's next?
So what's next after that? So then I spent quite a long time on my own. I moved around a lot of houses. I've probably lived now, I don't even know, is it like 22, 23 different houses? And I've been in my current one since 2015. So prior to that, it was not far off a house a year. And I think I was, again, that kind of past focus. I think I was looking for something. I think I was moving to try and find something. That I just travelled about the Wirral, and I ended up in a good place. I had a good friend who I'd known all throughout that, but we hadn't really gelled maybe in the same way. Her family were very, very supportive of me. They basically took me under their wing and just sort of they looked after me. You know, there's 5 kids in that family, and I used to go for Sunday dinner, and whenever I wanted I could go round. And I just remember sitting at this big dinner table, and, you know, like they're all chatting and shouting over each other, and there's food and the best atmosphere in the world. Yeah. So that...
Have you ever told them how?
I haven't told them that, you know. I still see them. I still go and see them and, you know, have the odd cup of tea with them and stuff like that.
Because you know what? That was probably so insignificant to them. It was just another a meal, when you're making a meal that size.
Yeah.
It was just one of the mates coming over for tea. But in terms of that kindness expressed by them, is immeasurable for you. It
really was. It changed. I think it changed my life at that point, because that was what I was looking for. I was looking for someone to say, you know, so their mum and the dad's very gentle, he's very intelligent and interesting, and their mum's really kind, but she would also say it as it is. She still does. You know, she would say, like, what are you going to do? So I ended up staying there for a few months. I lived with them for a few months. You know, what's next? We're not pushing you out, but what's next? And they were just, well, they're just amazing people. They didn't have to do any of that. I wasn't one of their kids, but their daughter was my best friend for a long time after that. She ended up having 6 kids of her own, you know, so that big family just keeps growing, and then unfortunately, you know, friendship kind of, it just run its course, really. But, you know, I speak to her sometimes. And
6 kids, she's busy.
She's busy. Yeah, definitely busy. So I was then, you know, trying to figure out what else do I want to do work-wise, what do I want to do with all this stuff. My daughter was in school and she's settled and quite happy and whatever else. But what I started to notice then, so you know, we're moving forward now. She's where is she here? She's coming up to high school age, and my mum and dad offered to pay for her to go to private school. And so she went for the last year of primary, and then she did a whole of a high school there. And it kind of, I don't know, I felt a bit of a circus act at times because I was so young, and because these parents were maybe a little bit older and very affluent and influential. And he used to tell this story to anyone because it's funny. I used to stand in the playground and I used to think, oh, everyone's looking at me. And there was one mum in particular who would come and talk to me. She was a GP and she was lovely. She was the friend. Her daughter was friends with my daughter. She would always make the effort to come and chat to me. But then I'd watch John Barnes's kids went there, and I'd watch him walk into the playground, and people would just flock to him, and I'd kind of stand back as an observer and think, I'm probably all right here on my own, I'm not sure I'd like that side of it either. That's not fun. So yeah, I started doing lots of different work at that point. I moved away from care work, decided I didn't really want to do that anymore. And I started looking at events work and event management, essentially. So I was doing all kind of jobs, and it took me to lots of different places, which wasn't the easiest with a child. But yeah, some really, really crazy jobs. And again, I would never say no to anything. So they would ask, I'd get a phone call saying, can you roller skate? I'd go, yeah, sure. And I can remember this conversation. I remember saying to Jade, she was about 12, you've got roller boots. Yeah, I've got roller boots, haven't I? Okay. Can you teach me? Because I've got to roller boot tomorrow for this job. And we were going up and down the road. She's like, I think you've got it. And I would never say no to anything. I was the front end of a horse. A little elephant in an award ceremony. Oh, yeah. There's a classic photo that pops up of myself and a friend that I made at that time, because I'd started to develop some really good friendships by then. And we were out doing a drinks promotion in Liverpool, and when we got there, they gave us these costumes. They're like, you can put these on, and they were tiny red hot pants, a red basque, a kind of devil-ish neckerchief thing, and we had to walk around serving desperados. I don't even know what that is, some sort of tequila beer maybe or something. You look back and just go, wow, well. But annually that photo pops up of us next to each other, and I'm like, So that's, so I started to gather experience in that respect. Did that for quite a long time, and then as things got a little bit more, it's not serious, but as schooling progressed and whatever else, I thought, actually, I don't want to do that anymore, because I'm not here as much as I want to be, and I'm always worrying about where the next piece of work's coming from and where it's going to be, and all that kind of, those issues. So then I went to volunteer at Clare House, local children's hospice.
Yes.
I went to volunteer there, and within a couple of weeks their volunteer manager left, so they offered myself and a friend, who again is a really solid friend now, they offered us kind of part-time work, taking over that role.
Wow, brilliant.
Yeah, and I stayed there for 9 years, and did lots and lots of different things with them.
So how are we getting on personally yet? Because you've been on your own for a while.
Yeah, I've done a lot of counselling.
Yeah.
And I haven't really engaged with any of it. I didn't engage with it in the way I have since, and so I wasn't really feeling the benefits of it. But I was just kind of winging it, getting by, doing lots of fun things, having a good night out every Saturday, and living the life that maybe I would have lived prior to all that kind of controlling, coercive behaviour. And then I met he's now my ex-husband, but I met him on a night bus home from Liverpool with aforementioned friend of kind of, I call them my other family. So, met him on a night bus on the way home. Really didn't like him. Was really miffed that he was trying to eat my chips, and my friend had like kind of pulled his friend, and they were sat back together, and he was chatting to me, and I was just like, I just remember kind of huddling my chips and going,
don't mess with the food.
Yeah, this is not yours. Get your fingers away. But to cut a bit of a long story short, there I met him. Then he kept in touch. He gave me his number, and we didn't meet again for about another 9 months because he lived down south and I was here. There was a couple of times that he came up to see friends, and I bottled going to meet him. So I said, I don't even remember what he looks like. And then eventually arranged to meet him. And prior to meeting him, he sent me a photo and it had 2 people in it. Because I said, I can't remember what you look like. And when he sent me this photo, I had no clue which one he was. So it's like, I asked my friend.
Date.
She was like, I've got no idea. You're going to have to ask him. So I asked him and I knew which one he was. And then met him. And spent roughly 7 years with him in a fairly healthy relationship. You know, it was fine. And then after 7 years, I realised that we maybe weren't going in the same direction. So called it a day. We were apart for about a year. And then we got back together and we got married. And you know, with hindsight, that perhaps wasn't ready to do that at that point, because again, I hadn't done a lot of the work that I needed to do on myself. And then we had 2 more children. So I had my son in 2011 and then my daughter in 2013. And that was a very, very different experience. I had lots and lots of worries. I had lots of, you know, wow, what am I doing? Is this going to go wrong? And am I doing the right thing by these children? All this sort of stuff. My son was really intense. He was a really, really angry baby. And I say angry baby, and I can't say that now, but he was always crying. People used to say to me, you know, can we go for a coffee? I'd be like, yeah, sure. Okay, do you want to settle him down first? I was like, this is his status quo. This is what he does.
Let's different parenting experience to the very happy, bouncy child
different,
to angry.
Totally different. And he had milk allergies, and that was why he was so angry, because his tummy was really, really sore. Didn't find that out for 4 months. And that was tough. That was a tough time that was tougher than being a teenage mum.
Yeah.
But I met a really, really supportive group who were lovely. I fed him myself. They'd all had, it was a kind of community breastfeeding support group, and I met all of them with their children. So we do something every year. I've kept in touch with them. They were the best group of people for me to meet. And every year we go away and we get a bunkhouse and all the kids do stuff together, and there's, you know, various boys and girls, all of within the same school year. And then there's kind of next generations that have come along. That the support from those groups, or that group, was huge for me at the time.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So then I want to talk about self-kindness, I think, because you've mentioned it a couple of times now. So what's been your journey there? You're clearly kind to yourself now, but how did you get there? And why is it important?
Why is it important? Because it's important for so many reasons, isn't it? So the way I got there was I decided, after I'd had my children, I was very, very sleep deprived with my son because of the situation with him. And then I had my daughter, and she's very much like my eldest was. You know, she was kind of a very content baby and such like. And once that was all done, I think I came to just a bit of a crux in my life. I went, right, what are we going to do? Like, what am I going to do here? I don't really want to do this job anymore, because working for a children's hospice got hard emotionally with children who are young. You know, where do I engage? Where do I put my energies? So I decided to go back to uni and retrain. Well, I wanted to retrain, and the opportunity presented itself to go back to uni. But alongside that, I thought, you've got stuff you need to deal with, because the marriage was not going particularly well at that point, and I could kind of feel it petering out. I thought, you've got to invest in yourself. You've spent your life investing in these situations and people who probably don't even want you to do it. They're not asking you to. It's not an expectation. And the person you're not investing in is yourself. You know, you've made these token efforts to go off to counselling, and then you've sat there and nodded and done all said all the right things, and then left and done nothing about it. So I did several things. I found a course at uni that I was really interested in. I found the things that inspired me. I'm interested in sustainability, sustainable business. So while my son was little, I did a degree with the Open University. So I went on to do my master's when I went back to uni. And I found a really, really good therapist who, whether it was her or me or just that kind of perfect point in time where both things come together. I did some work with her to understand myself a little bit better, to understand, you know, to let go of some of maybe the resentment, the anger, the stuff that I felt to not only those people in those relationships, but also maybe my parents to some extent, you know. And I spent a lot of time thinking about my mum particularly, because my dad was always quite constant and my dad was very, very gentle. And I kind of thought, well, you know, she did her best. And I told myself that before, but I'd never believed it.
Yeah.
So it was about getting to a point of understanding that, you know, nobody's perfect. It's our first time here, isn't it? Nobody really knows what the answers are or what they should do. And that being kind to myself also involved being kind to them. And you don't have to forgive everything. You don't have to forgive everyone, and I don't think you should. Because, you know, not actively forgive them anyway, but if you hold on to these kind of resentments and unhealthy behaviours and all those sort of patterns, they're only to the detriment of you in the end.
You've sussed that out.
Yeah.
And so do you think you've forgiven your mum, or are you still on that journey?
No, I have, definitely. Yeah, a couple
and was that
of years
quite
ago.
liberating?
Really.
Did you feel...
Hugely. Like, literally week in, week out with these therapy sessions, I'd just go, oh, we should have done this earlier. You know, any of those sorts of the triggers, the things that would still kick in along the way, they still exist, but they cease to have the impact that they ever would have had before. And even now there's triggers, there's things that, you know, my mum might do or whatever that I can be triggered by, but I know exactly how to deal with them. And I know in terms of myself internally, and I'm not quite reactive, I don't think, as I was for a very, very long time, because this kind of anger, this resentment, this feeling of, you know, I'm on my own, I'm an island. That bit I haven't quite cracked. Yeah. I'm still pretty much, you know, I'm not good at asking for help. I'm not good at that at all. It feels very uncomfortable for me. But I also recognise that.
And what if someone does an act of kindness for you? Is that uncomfortable for you?
It is uncomfortable for me. Yeah, it is uncomfortable. But, you know, again, I've sort of taught myself that it might feel uncomfortable in that first instance. And then if I just sit with it for a little while, and that was the key to a lot of my therapy, just sit with that feeling. You know, imagine it, visualise it as something in your belly. And we used to talk about you create this visual, and mine was this kind of blue fuzzy ball, kind of like a little monster. And if you sit with that, it'll stop bouncing about, it'll stop growling, it'll just calm. And those initial knee-jerk reactions and feelings dissipate. And then you can think about it rationally and go, actually, do you know what? That person just wants to help. They're just offering help. You don't have to accept it, but it might be good for you if you did.
Yeah. You seem quite a chilled person.
Yeah,
that comes across.
Good. It's been a journey. It's been a really, really long journey. And COVID was particularly challenging in respect of that, because my dad had been diagnosed with blood cancer a few years before, so he had to isolate for 3 years nearly, and then he died in October, not last year, the year before. And you know, there was so many emotions throughout that time that I had to deal with, and again, bringing these kind of therapies into practice and into play, I don't know what I would have done without them, actually.
Yeah. You've got these tools now that, because shit's going to happen, it happens, doesn't it? And you can't stop it.
For life, isn't it?
But you've got ways to be able to deal with that now.
Yeah, absolutely. And understanding the flip side of that. Sometimes, you know, I've stopped trying to fix people. I can't fix people. I'm never going to be able to fix people, but I can offer help. I can offer my support. And I make sure that my friends know how much I value them. My friends are so important to me. They know how much I value them. They know that they're loved and that I will be there for them. And if I feel like I've dropped the ball with that a little bit, I'll always kind of be open about it. Yeah. I've been really busy. I've not had time, and I feel like I've missed that, but I'm still here. I'm always here.
What's the best act of kindness you've done?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, we every Christmas, and it's a bit of how do I describe this without giving it away? Anyway, my children are no longer invested in the fable.
Do they not believe in
No.
Christmas anymore?
That's it. And so I was really kind of, how do I approach
Giving it away.
this?
How many kids do you think are listening to this podcast?
You just
I'm
never
sorry,
know.
children.
He's very real. But yeah, when my son said to me, my son's very black and white, I don't think that this is a real thing, is it? And it's you. So I sort of said, yeah, okay, it is. I decided upon this kind of avenue whereby, or an approach whereby I would say to him that the spirit of Christmas isn't about one thing or one person, it's about everything. And the thing that we do at Christmas that he now does, and my daughter now does as of this year as well, is that they pick one person, and I do too, at Christmas, and we buy them a gift and we deliver it to them, and I just never say who it's from. And I love doing that. I absolutely love doing it, and for me it's random people. For them at the moment it's family, so there is a chance that they are not quite as what's the word, under the radar as they think they are.
But how does it make you feel doing that random act of kindness? What do you feel inside?
It makes me feel amazing. There was, again, I'm not going to give it away, but there was someone in particular that springs to mind, and she was having a really, really tricky time, and I didn't know her brilliantly. We've had a few coffees over the years and such like, and she's helped me out with advice on very specific things. And she was just having a really, really tricky time. You could see her social media was getting angrier and angrier and angrier, and there was lots of comments, and this sort of, you just got this vibe from her. And this was going back a few years now, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do it for her. It's before my kids even started doing it, and I thought, I'm gonna do it for her because she's obviously having a crappy time, and I don't know why, and I don't talk to her in that way to know why. And then she put a little post on social media, and it's not like that filming yourself giving nice things to somebody homeless just to get the likes or whatever else. I just gave her a little hamper. She's got specific dietary stuff. I put a little kind of, not hamper, just a little bag of stuff. And she posted something just saying, in contrast to everything else that she'd put, I don't know who delivered this, but I'm really happy. It made me smile this morning. And it was that feeling. It was just knowing that she'd got up that morning and gone, oh, I feel really happy now.
It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling, isn't it?
Giving someone else the opportunity to smile.
But then back at you, and I've had to learn this, that's why I now accept acts of kindness, and they do genuinely make me smile, because I know how that person's feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's almost like the more you do, the more you get that little buzzy feeling.
Yeah.
But actually, you want other people to have that opportunity to make you feel like that, because it will give them the buzzy feeling. And so if you kind of I agree with you. You seem to have these two lives, don't you? And it's like, what would you tell your 15-year-old self now? No, not even your 15. You were quite happy at 15.
Yeah.
Your 17, 18-year-old self.
I'd tell myself I was worth more. I don't know if it would have made any difference at the time. And I think I would tell myself to just keep going. Just keep going. And, it fascinates me now, because I think at some point when I can wedge another kind of few hours into my day somehow, that I'd like to give that back. I'd like to share that knowledge. And you see teenage mums now, or teenage dads with their babies, and I don't want to be necessarily that person who goes up to them and starts giving them unsolicited advice, but equally I want to say to them, if you've ever felt judged by anybody, don't let it get to you, because you're worth so much more than that, and that's just their view. I'd love to do some work with that in the future.
And it's like it's that external viewpoint that really goes deep, isn't it?
Yeah. It really does.
What others think about you really goes deep. But actually, what does it matter what other people think about you?
Now it doesn't matter at all. And it's freeing, isn't it? It's liberating. If you can get to the point where you genuinely don't really care what people think about you, then it's such a nice place to be. It gives you opportunities. It takes all of that mental anxiety away from you. But networking, stuff like that, I'm never really going to love networking, but I'm quite content to walk into a room and just talk to people. And if they're not the right people for me, or we don't gel, that's fine as well. But yeah, it's freeing.
What a great place to get to.
Oh, it really is.
We always do a kindness summary at the end, and I'm giving you one of yours.
Please do.
It's all around like, what can we do to try and like help others, support others. And I'd say for you, when you were in that position, actually, people weren't, I don't know what I'm saying here, but it's that deeper relationship, I guess, that you need to have to be able to open up to someone.
Yeah.
So that you can share some of that background stuff, but on the back of that, it's also us looking in on that situation. Is don't make judgments, don't assume, and make yourself available.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's say, what are your in summary? What would you say we could do to make sure kindness is just bigger in the world? Looking at it probably from, your perspective as a teenage mum and someone who's experienced domestic violence, which that's what it was, I think. It was.
Yeah, it was. I think being available to actually listen, that active listening is really important, because, when I think back to some of those professional support services, including the likes of the probation service and such, like if I'd have felt that I could talk, if I'd have felt that I had a voice, perhaps I would have said, actually, can I do anything to help this person? And I could have had those separate conversations. And you see a lot more of it now, I forget what it's called, when you can go to a bar and ask for Angela, is it? Yeah. So you've got a lot more of that kind of anonymity.
And do you think you'd have used that if you knew Ask Angela existed?
Possibly. I don't know, but because I didn't see or understand any avenues that existed to me that would allow me to just talk openly without judgment, I didn't talk.
Yeah. So that's one. You need to come up with three.
Okay, so active listening. Be present. I mean, that's another thing, isn't it? Be present. Don't. And it's not always about, our lives get so busy, don't they? You might not see your friends for such a long time, but it's those little bits of communication, the little bits of contact that mean a lot, I think, even if it is a stupid meme or something, or you just hi, how's your day going message. It doesn't have to be an hour's phone conversation. So you just kind of keep that communication going. That's my second one. And then I think the third one is like, cut yourself some slack. Yeah. You're never going to get it all right, are you? You never are. And when you start to feel a bit overwhelmed by, I know, I'm going to go for my last one, and I think this is such a good piece of advice, and it came off Insta a few months ago, you should never make decisions about your life after 9 p.m. So,
okay.
Yeah, and I really liked that, because I thought, for me, if I start to ever overthink, which I don't really do anymore, it's always at that time. It's always when I'm tired.
Is it?
Yeah, and people talk about waking in the night, don't they, and trying to solve their problems and whatever. I'm pretty sure, the light bulb was not invented at 2 a.m. and the solution to world peace will not be invented at 2 a.m.
Yeah, you see, I'm normally asleep by 9:30, so
you don't have a small window.
It's a small gap, but I would say when things have been really difficult for me, I do lie awake at night, and it's like there's this bloody loop that I can't stop that just keeps...
Yeah. And I talked to my daughter about that now, so she's in child protection, and I talked to her, and we have that same view. If you're lying there, can you solve that problem then? Or the alternative is you're going to get a good night's sleep, because you can kind of pause it and then think about it the next day.
Is she in child protection because of the husband?
Oh no, that's what she works in.
Oh right.
Sorry.
No,
she's doing that job herself.
That's interesting. She's chosen to do that job.
Yeah. It is partly in relationship to that kind of family environment.
What a nice circle though that she wants to give back. Oh,
she's amazing.
I think we'll leave it there. That's a very nice place to end.
Awesome. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Curious Chats and Kind Acts. It was lovely to have you. Can I just say a massive thank you to all the people that we've interviewed who have been so honest and vulnerable with me so that we can have these real life stories to share with you, our wonderful listener. And remember, we'd love to hear what random or small acts of kindness you've been up to so that we can maybe do a few. Find us on all the socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and all our /ActsGB, that's ACTSGB. And drop a comment on our feed, tweet us, or even send a photo. Let's build our kindness community together. We'll read some of our favourites on future episodes of Curious Chats and Kind Acts. And you never know, we might even have a go at a few of your ideas ourselves. Watch this space on the socials. For more information about the Acts charity, including how to donate to us, head to actsonline.uk. See you next time.